You're welcome back to the conversation in News Central Television. It's now time for us to switch gears to all the matters. We'll be looking at the situation in Niger as the military junta has signaled a willingness to engage in dialogue with the West African Regional Bloc, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, marking a significant shift. The bloc had imposed sanctions and threatened force to reverse the coup, but like the junta, rejected earlier talks. Following a visit by influential Islamic scholars led by Sheikh Abdullahi Bala Lau from Nigeria, the junta expressed readiness for dialogue. The junta leader, General Abdurrahman Chiani, approved talks, hoping to discuss lifting the sanctions and addressing the crisis. Historical ties between Niger and Nigeria, emphasized by the scholars, likely played a role in the junta's openness to such mediation. Now, joining me on the discussion this evening is Bala Abdullahi, a security expert, who joins us from Katsina State in northern Nigeria. One welcome to you, Bala Abdullahi, and thanks for joining us. But before I get to my first question, I would like us to take a listen to what the leader of the Nigerian delegation, Sheikh Abdurrahman Ahmed Lau, did say, explaining the objective of his mission to newsmen.
We're here as a delegation of the ulama of Nigeria across the length and breadth of the country for the purpose of finding a peaceful way out of the problem that is between Niger and the Economic Community of West African States. We have sought the permission of the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to have a role to mediate and find a peaceful way out, and he has graciously permitted us to do that. That is the reason we are here. And contrary to the reports that we have been reading in the media, we came to a very warm welcome. We saw things for ourselves. We were stunned. We were surprised. We further appreciated the value of hearing from both sides. We are enriched with what we have seen and what we have heard. And we'll go back home to report to His Excellency the President what we saw and what we discussed. Of course, war is an ill wind that blows no one no good. It is a matter of the last resort. And from what we have seen, we think the situation is redeemable because the Nigerian government is ready and open to dialogue and a peaceful resolution of this. We pray that Allah in His mercy will...
That was the head of the Nigerian delegation sent by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to mediate in Niger, Sheikh Abdullahi Bala Lau. Now I'd like to bring in our guest into this conversation, Bala Abdullahi in Katsina. Now, Bala, what prompted the military junta in Niger to signal a sort of openness to dialogue with ECOWAS after their defiant stand in the past? And what factors do you think may have contributed to this shift in stance?
It's basically two factors. One is internal and the other one is external. The internal factor perhaps could be the issue with regard to the people and people in Niger Republic, what they were yearning for in terms of the economic hardship, in terms of the economic predicament, and how they were able to be supportive with the military junta in the Niger Republic, and the other relationship internally with other figures in the Nigerian Republic. And the second one, which is the external, is the cohesive nature of the Niger and the other, the connectiveness, the networking between Niger and some outsiders, like in Nigeria, in Mali, in Morocco, in Togo, in Burkina Faso, and the rest. And certainly, this must have been the first steps that the ECOWAS government should have taken Because even wars, the last resort of wars, when we go, we come back, is the dialogue. That is the last resort. And that has been, that what ought to have been the case regarding the ECOWAS, not the military. So that has been the two major factors that pushed the Nigerian president to resort to this dialogue.
Thank you, Bala Abdullahi. I would like to introduce our second guest on this segment, Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former Deputy Director at the Department of State Services. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Ejiofor.
You're not coming in clearly. The audio is bad.
Okay, I'll just go straight to the question. How do you assess the credibility and effectiveness of the involvement of influential Islamic scholars from Nigeria, led by Sheikh Abdullahi Balalau, in mediating talks between the junta in Niger and ECOWAS? What historical and cultural factors do you think contributed to their potential influence?
The audio is really bad. I can't even get it.
Okay, we'll get our engineers to look at it, and I'll get back to you in the course of this conversation. Bala Abdullahi, did you hear that question, or would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, I think the most and foremost, you see, you can't separate Nigeria and Niger. In fact, what connected them, these two countries, perhaps is the Islamic movement of the Usman Danfodio in the year 1804. And you see most of the northern states and some states in Niger Republic were ruled one time by Usman Danfodio. And when you look at the genesis of the Islamic perspectives, you can understand how connected, how related these ulamas are with the Nigerian government. So that perhaps could be the solid reason behind the importance and the stance they may likely to take and influence the decision taken or retract the decision that has already been taken by the Nigerian government regarding the resolution and the dialogue that ought to have been taken by other parties in the discussion.
Now, Bala, let's look at, you did say, you know, in the retrospectively speaking, that ECOWAS should have looked at the options of dialogues before sanctions, and that even if you go to war, at the end of the day, you still have to sit down to dialogue. Now, my question to you, Bala, is this. In what ways have ECOWAS sanctions impacted Niger's economy and its citizens? And I know it's not just impacting Niger's economy, there's also a corresponding effect in Nigeria, especially the northern part of the country that shares a border with Niger. From your understanding, what do we know so far? What feelers are you getting from people on the ground and businesses? And how does the junta's perception of the sanctions as an injustice reflect broader regional power dynamics?
Actually, the two countries will suffer. Nigeria, for example, specifically, will also suffer regarding the border closure and this issue regarding the Niger go ahead to close their borders, because the economic activities taking place in Nigeria and Niger and the income generating activities that Nigeria is driving from the relationship, believe you me, is too much to mention. And besides that, the social cohesion that has been there regarding the two countries is really very dented by this issue of border. And the number of people coming in and going out from the country, though there were lots of interaction and intermingling relationship historically between the two countries. So this has deterred to the extent that if a Nigerian person sees you, he sees an enemy. In fact, because of the role Nigeria is playing in the ECOWAS administration, it becomes like it is a sole decision taken by Tinubu. And that may not also far-fetched from the truth that Nigeria is contributing about the large number of the resources of the running affairs of the ECOWAS. So whatever decision and whatever issues from the other angles, people are seeing it is a single decision taken by Tinubu, and that was the most of the abusive words being poured in Nigerian people. And aside that,
Abdullah, sorry to
government.
interrupt you at this point. From my understanding of what you said so far is that even though an intervention force has not been deployed, one gunshot has not been fired, the overall sentiment is that Nigeria is driving this anti-junta narrative, and it's led by Nigeria's president, who also happens to double as the chairman of ECOWAS, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Yes, even if there is sanity or there is formalization of this relationship today, the relationship must, the two countries must put some mechanism in place in order to revert back to the status quo, because the relationship as it is now, it has been altered, it has been shattered, it has been hindered by this pronouncement of the ECOWAS of regarding the military force involvement. So what I'm saying in short is that despite there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, but again, certain mechanisms need to be put in place in order to avert and see the tendency and possibility of regaining the previous glory of the relationship, so that movement of persons as the ECOWAS protocol and goods and services can also be on track.
Now, Bala Abdullahi, the Prime Minister of the Junta, Ali Mohammed Lamin Zain, stated that lifting of sanctions is not a precondition for talks. How might the Junta and ECOWAS navigate this aspect during the negotiations, knowing the negative and adverse effects these sanctions have on the Junta in Niger, and how it's already biting and the people are feeling its impact?
It's of two ways. Naturally, there shouldn't have been any sanction, whether economic, whether political, whether whatsoever. There shouldn't have been at the initial stage. It is the total understanding, the total decision to be taken by all member countries is to go and see the Nigerian military leader, discuss with him, sit with him, discuss with him, bring issues of compromising standard and see how best you can help. And this might not also be the first and the last time they will also have this. The second time will also have some strategy to put in place. The third time, unless otherwise all avenues are exhausted and nothing happens and nothing positive coming out from it, then the issue of sanction may start to emanate from whatever decision to be taken. Then aside that, things may likely to bring in something positive. That is one aspect.
Okay.
Then the second part is that naturally it is born out of contention that necessity is the father of invention, is the mother of invention. Perhaps this sanction will now explore other avenues from the side of the Nigerian government to see the tendency of addressing, of having plan B in terms of economic, in terms of power generation, in terms of social interaction, and in terms of administrative issues, so that to avoid, because issue of frequent coup in African sub-region is a matter of interest as to the issue regarding the connectedness and of international conspiracy theory and other important issues that may likely, if time permit, we may likely to go into it. But the point one is trying to look into is that this may perhaps open ways for Niger to develop, to start thinking how best they can develop their own, not dependent on other issues, not dependent on Nigeria, not dependent on foreign countries, not dependent on any other.
Thank you very much, Bala Abdullahi. I'd like to bring in Mike Ejiofor, our second guest, into the conversation. Now, Mike, when this new government of General Chiani took over for Mohamed Bazoum, ECOWAS reacted in the strongest possible terms, reeling out a barrage of sanctions. And then just last Thursday, the ECOWAS heads of states did activate standby force to go and restore constitutional order in Niger. But yesterday, or over the weekend, the junta changed its stance and seemed to be more acceptable to dialogue. And my question to you now is the junta's evolving stance towards dialogue and the potential for negotiations. What strategies and mechanisms should ECOWAS now employ to strike a delicate balance between addressing the junta's grievances while upholding democratic norms and regional stability? Hello, Mr. Michael Jofor, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
I say the best form of resolution to conflict is dialogue. And ECOWAS heads of government came with a threat of military invasion before leaving the option of dialogue open. But that's the complaint of the junta, that they were not heard. They didn't hear their own side of the story before using military option. And I think it's not late. Both sides, since the junta has also agreed to dialogue, I think it's better both side dialogue, because going to war using military option is not going to help anybody. It's going to create a lot of problems, especially for Nigeria that has frontline states. I mean the states now, the northern states bordering Niger. We'll have a humanitarian crisis. We'll have a lot of issues if we go to use military option. But the fact remains that there must be a solution to this problem through dialogue.
Dialogue indeed. Now, stay with you, Mr. Mike Jofor, in the context of the junta's willingness to engage in dialogue with ECOWAS. Could you provide insights into potential compromises or concessions that each party might need to make in order to achieve a mutually acceptable resolution to the crisis in Niger? Because both seem to have a hardline stand. The junta is defiant, and ECOWAS also wants to send a message that, look, we're no longer going to tolerate military takeovers in this region. So what would be a fine compromise as they begin to engage in dialogue?
Well, tough as the ECOWAS set of government might sound, I believe that my own idea, my own take, is that both sides should dialogue, because if you decide to forcefully remove the junta, they'll be trying for, changing a legitimate government. And I think my view is that both sides should agree, maybe possibly look for giving a period, in which a transition government could be formed, because military is no more, military government is no more, should no more be tolerated. But they have given their reasons for overthrowing the government. So I believe that they should be, the ECOWAS heads of government should give them time within which to hand over to democratically elected government, because I think the issue of the former president coming is foreclosed, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Jofor. I'd like to bring in Bala Abdullahi and Katsina back into the conversation. Now, Bala, given Nigeria's president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's dual role as the head of ECOWAS and a participant in mediation efforts, could you provide insights into the potential advantages and challenges posed by his multifaceted role and how this dynamic might impact the outcome of the negotiations?
First and foremost, if you look at the leadership, it is given to Nigeria. Naturally, it must be given to Nigeria because of the contribution Nigeria is making to the development of ECOWAS. And even if it is not given to Nigeria, most of this decision to be taken or resolution will have Nigeria with a large percentage of the take-up. And aside that, it will also brings into the level of commitment by the ECOWAS leadership to the Nigerian government if this case is being resolved amicably without using force. Then again, when you look at the stance of Nigeria in the ECOWAS position, is that propagating democracy in the sub-Saharan or in the sub-Saharan states, and that will also give Nigeria international concern and international reputation. And aside being that it will be a kind of power that has been penciled down regarding the issue of military junta or frequent military juntas in the African sub-region, and that also gives rise and some privileges for free movement of trade, free movement of persons, and the issue of protocol in terms of issue of arms proliferations and smuggling of
so they're very serious implications.
Yes. That also will affect that.
Thank you, Bala. Now, Mike, as we wrap up the conversation, the detained ousted President Mohamed Bazoum remains a focal point in the crisis. Just last week, the junta threatened to kill him if there was any invasion of Nigerian territory by ECOWAS or any foreign forces. How could his release become a pivotal point in the negotiations, and what are the implications of his continued detainment? And finally, what are your expectations of the outcomes of the dialogue when they begin?
Well, I don't see the junta releasing the former president, because it's now being used as a shield. And any invasion will result to his killing and will have a lot of collateral damage. You know, it will bring down the issue of dialogue. So I think they also want to keep the former president until the matter is fully resolved. So I think it's a very delicate issue that the ECOWAS heads of government should handle properly so that we don't have escalation of the crisis.
And finally, your outcome for the dialogues, are you expecting a positive outcome when they eventually begin between the junta and ECOWAS? And do you think that could buy time off the potential invasion to restore democratic order as promised by or as threatened by ECOWAS?
Well, I'm optimistic that the issues will be resolved. But I can tell you, honestly speaking, that a military option is out of the way. Because if you use military option, it's going to escalate the crisis. We'll have on our borders issue of humanitarian crisis. Don't also forget that we'll have a lot of Nigerians. The intercultural relationship between Niger and Nigeria, there's hardly any difference between Nigerians and Nigerians.
It's almost like going to war with yourself.
I believe they should resolve the matter amicably.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former director at the Department of State Services in Abuja, and also Bala Abdullahi, security expert in Katsina State. It was a pleasure speaking with you both, gentlemen. Thank you for your time and insight. This is where we drop the curtains on today's edition of The Conversation. In the first half of the speak about the situation in South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has pardoned former President Jacob Zuma and other prisoners. And we just concluded our conversation on the situation in Niger, where the junta has expressed a willingness to finally dialogue with ECOWAS. Thank you very much for being a part of the program. I am Benga Bora. See you next time on The Conversation. Bye-bye.